Who the fuck is that guy?
Welcome, everybody. And yeah, I'm playing along with the crowd here. I am America's number one John Kruk hater, allegedly. So, welcome in, everybody. Joe Quill's here with you. Time to get the show started here on this Tuesday night. I don't even know what day of the week it is. Um, I see I have a story on here from 25 days ago. Well, that's on Twitch, by the way. But Joe Quill's here with you on this Tuesday night. Planning on a quicker show tonight. And that's right, I forgot to check something here. Um, I got a doctor's appointment early tomorrow morning. That was part of my decision um, with a lot of things going on with, you know, tonight. I gave you the warning that um, there may or may not have been a show tonight. Part of the reason why was the weather. And I can tell you for a fact, there's a lot of people out there, and part of the reason why I mentioned how a lot of the John Kruk fans out there that want to hear him talk about him being in a Turkish prison or whatever it was, that story was back then, um, are probably the same people that love John Kruk, are probably the same people that bitch and moan to the meteorologists out there because, oh, we didn't get rain, we didn't get enough of rain, we didn't do this, we didn't get this, we didn't get that. Man, I feel like a parent at Christmas, even though I'm not the meteorologist here. I feel like I'm a family member watching a little kid complain that he didn't get something for Christmas. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about practice. Not a game, not a game. No, like, uh, but anyways, some of the things I do have to say. Do I think John Crook's a bad announcer? Not really. And you know, but I think things have settled down on my Threads account. And by the way, if you're watching on Twitch, you get to see all the stuff that I'm at. Got to work on the TikTok stuff. So, but if you go into Twitch, you get to see all these links and stuff like that, and you can join me. But the one thing I will tell you guys is, if you join me at twitch.tv/Joe Quills, you can get the alerts when I'm live. Because I mean, you got to go through some hoops with Facebook, with the Q&A Sports Zone. You got to go through hoops with YouTube, I believe, both mine and Q&A Sports Zone 1. And X, you just got to hope that it comes up. But if you come over to twitch.tv/Joe Quills and you download that app, bing, Joe Quill Show is live, even though I forgot to change the alert today again. So I got to give myself one of those, because what I wanted to say was something along the lines of uh, the new number one John Kruk hater or something to that effect, something that will get somebody to watch. But apparently, things have quieted down. So we'll get into that. Saquon Barkley's house got broken into over the weekend. I forgot to mention that yesterday. We'll discuss that. NFL players are continuing to push for grass. No, not that grass. The green stuff that on the stadium floor. MLB, the MLBPA came back with a counteroffer to the draft proposal that the MLB executives had. So we'll get into that. And I'm thinking this is going to be a shorter podcast. Well, shouldn't say podcast because how I define podcast and how everybody else defines podcast is probably different. I consider a podcast the Preston and Steve definition of it. If you ask Preston and Steve, they probably, just like the English language, it evolves over time. So I guarantee you they have a different answer now than what they had when podcasting first became a thing, or it really started to become a thing. If you ask them what a podcast is, they will tell you an audio file, a really large audio file. Now that's what I consider a podcast. So whatever you think a podcast is, whatever. I just know that the English language evolves over time, and some words we choose not to let evolve because they're degrading or whatever. But before we get to the John Kruk stuff, and I guarantee you, unless something really quirky happens over the next couple of days, I may not have a show on Thursday. I may go up to the parks again for some more content because it is hard liquor and country night at the track on Thursday. And also, it's a mandatory payout on the Philly Big Five. They're letting all the money go because of the fact that it is the last card before summer vacation. And let me just check one thing here. Prescott Downs canceled some races today, probably because of the thunderstorms. Carryover right now in the Philly Pick 5 is $207,000. Now, if that does not carry over into Thursday's card, it is because somebody had the only winning ticket. So apparently there must have been two winners at Parks today, because even with that carryover, the Pick 5 paid $15,000. And you had two long shots in there in the 7th and 9th races. They had a 9-race card. So, I don't think they're giving anything away tomorrow or on Thursday. So 5 o'clock post. I may have my Sixers shirt on. I don't know. But I don't think they're giving anything away on Thursday. So, but it is the last card before so on Thursday at Parks, Boots, Brews, and Betting. BREWS, not BRUISE, Brews. But Country Night brings Nashville vibes to Ben Salem with live country music by country rock artist Andy Ross, drink specials, and a special partnership with American Rebel Light Beer for the perfect summer night out. Okay, so that's what Thursday is. So why did I think I might not have a show? One, I had the doctor's appointment. Two, I'm tired. But I'm purposely cutting back on the caffeine today. The other is we had some storms coming through. And there's a guy that I follow on Facebook who used to be at 6ABC, and he was actually on probably the worst show on local television, and it's called Mike. No, not Mike who sits over there on Monday nights. Mike Jarrett's show. I mean, if I have it on, if I have the show on and you're sitting here and you're wondering, you just called this the worst show ever. Well, if it's on, I'm probably sitting here at the computer or asleep on the couch because, I'm going to try to avoid that like the plague. But it's not a great show. But Chris Howard was on there last night, and he got about 3 minutes of airtime because they're jamming 90 minutes worth of shit into a 30-minute show. But Chris Howard, former 6ABC weather person, meteorologist, went down to Florida for a couple of years, and then came back up here to the local area. And he mentioned that, family here and all that, and, it's easier for the kids to see their grandparents and all that. So I get it. And he also had the opportunity to be the chief meteorologist down there for a couple of years in an area where the weather gets really crazy during the summer because that's Hurricane Alley. But I actually watched a part of his stream this morning on Facebook, and it might have been like me watching like seconds of it from earlier in the day or whatever. I don't remember because, I'm more focused on being the number one John Kruk here. Or it might have been even last night. Or it might have been, I think it was actually on Channel 3 last night. If the clouds are over the area, that will prevent a lot of the storms and the severity of storms that we could get. Well, we got storms, but it wasn't severe here. And the thing is, what may be severe, what may not be severe in your neighborhood, may be in another. Because I think a lot of people think, it's just a blanket thing where, everybody's going to get tornadoes. Everybody's going to get this hurricane. Everybody's getting this. Everybody's getting that. Well, thankfully, I'm not in Cape May, New Jersey. Now, this is a 10-second video, and I might have to play around with this a little bit. So, have you guys ever seen a water spout? Do you know what a water spout is? Well, a water spout is basically a tornado, but it's a tornado over water. So this is a quick 10-second video that somebody sent to 6ABC's Cecily Tynan or whatever she did in order to get this and post it. But here you see a tornado that made touchdown with the Delaware Bay. There you go. We'll let it replay again. So that kind of is why I told you guys that there may or may not be a show. Because part of the thinking that I had was, well, if I tell you that I'm going to have a show tonight and nothing happens. Now, granted, things happen that at the last minute you cancel. And I can very easily go on to X and Facebook on my phone and say, hey, I have a power outage, no show tonight. I'll be back on Thursday or Saturday or whatever. So I ended up that, I had a show. And I told you guys last night, but I didn't tell you about the second variable, which was me having a doctor's appointment. Because I guarantee you, I'm going right to bed when this is done, because I got to be at the doctor's office at 8:30 in the morning. And, since I've been out of Verizon, my usual wake up time is like 10 a.m. But except for during the week, except on Saturdays, we discussed this. I said Saturday's the only day I set my alarm, because I got to be up early so I can do my horse racing show also eligible on these same channels. But I will say this. Just because your neighborhood didn't get storms or more severe, other areas do. And these weather forecasts are projections. And things change. Things can change for the worse. Ask the Wynwood section of Philadelphia, where they got microburst storms last week or 2 weeks ago. South Philly had a microburst. Some areas get worse than others. No two areas is going to get the exact same thing. So I wanted to play it safe for you guys, because I'm trying to build the Twitch community, and I'm going to be building that with Out of the Park Baseball very soon, maybe this weekend. Oh no, I got something to do on Saturday, maybe Sunday. But, and turns out, and also, I stream a little bit differently than the rest of you guys that stream, because I know this is going to live for a month on Twitch, unless they pull it down for whatever reason, or I choose to pull it down because I'm protecting myself. Or let's say, whatever. It'll live on my YouTube. It'll live on the Q&A Sports YouTube. So I knew that was the case, but I feel like I can give you guys something where, even if you don't watch live, you can see, all right, why is Joe saying that he's the number one John Kruk hater? Because it's a play on words, because people just do not understand that, different strokes for different folks. Me, I prefer Ruben Amaro Jr. because he's intellectual. Too intellectual for about 2/3 of the Phillies fan base, at least. But I would rather be safe than sorry and say, hey, if there's not a show, you know why. But as you guys know, the ones that have followed me from the very beginning, there are times where I've canceled last minute, whether it's because of family issues, whether it's because my anxiety and depression were going through the roof, whether it was something else going on. You have a power outage. Now, also, if there's a fire alarm, knock on wood, nothing tonight. If the fire alarm goes off, I'm going to have to end the show, because the way that the fire alarm is now, there's nobody in this building that can turn it off until the fire department comes. Because there used to be a guy that used to work for the apartment. He used to live on the ground floor. He can go and turn it off. But nobody's here to do that. At least I don't think. So, but I'm always going to try to be real forward with you guys. And if I have to cancel, I'm going to try to cancel as much as possible. But as you saw when I shared my links here, especially on Twitch, because if you follow me on Twitch, you can scroll back to this, or you can see my dashboard below, which I got to work on this week. On top of all the other things I have Rolodex in my brain that I got to get done. Like for example, on my X account, I will say no show tonight. I will say it on the Joe Quill show, no show, or on my Facebook. Instagram, not really. Threads, not really. YouTube, not really. But the one thing I need to work on more than anything else, because a lot of times I let the stories happen. Like for example, I sat on that stupid shit I saw story from last night, which was from last week. But sometimes news breaks. Like we've been waiting for a couple of days now. Where's LeBron going? Hopefully not Philly. And then I will have to change to Philly's number one LeBron James hater, which I will not put the word allegedly next to it. But you do have to realize that things can change on a moment's notice. Whether it's the weather, my personal plans, whatever, because I'm thinking right now there may be a week that I'm off in August. It may even be 2 weeks, because there may be 2 trips that I'm taking, and they may be back to back. So just to let you guys know ahead of time. So, you can go to 25 minutes and 30 seconds, 25:15, let's say, of tonight's show. Oh yeah, Joe did say here that he may be offered, but I'll remind you. So, also, we've been playing around with this John Kruk's number one hater. All because I decided to share a joke that nobody liked. Here's the thing. Here it is. Now, I said Phillies Dodgers are on ESPN last night. So I said Mark Safer and John Kruk's incoherent babbling today. You go to the meme site, you can make that into some goofy stuff. So for the last time tonight, we're going to share some of the comments here and laugh at them. Because the thing is, the people think they're hurting my feelings. They're not. Guess what? I got over 1,000 views yesterday and today. More than I usually get on Threads. But the thing is this. If John Kruk sticks solely to baseball, he's fine. It's when he goes off in these stories about Turkish prisons and the hand job he got in Vegas or whatever when he was in AAA or whatever. I'm making that stuff up, okay, people? When he's talking about all this stuff that has nothing to do with the game, that's where I have the problem. Focus on the game. Now, granted, I'm ADD, ADHD. I know it. It was just that when I was growing up, it wasn't called ADD, ADHD. It was just called hyperactivity. So, it is what it is. So here's some of the comments that came up within the last 24 hours. We could go all the way to the beginning. Fuck it. For those that didn't see it last night. So the first person yesterday And I didn't respond to any of these. You know, I just didn't have time or anything. Um, I'm with you. I'm out of Philly listening market, but while in Philly, Kruk was never my favorite announcer. The thing is, and the other thing is, he only works 81 games, if that. I missed the days of Richie Ashburn, not because he was sounding like he had a perpetual concussion, but he actually worked all 162 games. Here's some of the comments from yesterday. Really? You're a Philly guy and said this? Fucking boo, we want Kruk. He's the best part of broadcast so many times a game. Well, apparently better than the second place Phillies that have come back from 9-20 to challenge the Braves in the division right now. Game tax, I don't know what that's supposed to be, whatever. I'll beat the game tonight, so I blessedly missed the ESPN commentators. Oh, by the way, interesting comment. Let me hide this for a second. Oh, by the way, Carl Ravish, who called the game last night on ESPN. Now, granted, Mike and I were watching the game last night, but we're keeping the volume down because, you know, you don't need to hear the game in the background. Also, the fact that you know, do I want to get a strike because they'll say, oh, we hear the Phillies game in the background. That's without written consent of Major League Baseball, that shtick that they say, the legalese that they say all the time. So just protecting my ass more than anything else. So whatever. But the thing is, Carl Ravish, he's calling all different sports. He isn't just a one sport guy. You know, all the ESPN guys that they have. And mind you, ESPN lost baseball and then got it back. But they got it on a reduced schedule, but also they got the MLBPA package. So from what we know, at least 6 people got laid off today. I hate that they say fired because it wasn't really fired. It was just like, hey, we're not renewing your contract or whatever whatever they would say. So that's what they said about that. So we'll go back to this. Some of the things that were said. Boo. Okay, whatever. You know. So Kamashta4 said, I just muted his dumb ass. Message to that person. Okay? And mind you, the person has this person has wrong one. They have a picture of a nun smoking a cigarette, reading a Bible, and giving everybody the finger. Stay classy, my friends. Oops, and I unshared that. 1 second, let's go back to that. So, whoops, wrong one. So, but I will say this. I probably have more brains in my pinky than you do in your entire body, middle finger included. So right back at you. So, and also, I highly doubt you're educated as well. So if you mute me, you're lost, not mine. Rage bait, not falling for it. Whatever. Thou shalt not speaketh ill of the great and powerful Kruk. Well, the more powerful person was Mitch Williams, because if he doesn't hit John Kruk in the balls, picking somebody off at first base, John Kruk doesn't eventually find out that he has testicular cancer, and he might have been dead. So if you're going to bow down to John Kruk, bow down to Mitch Williams with his wildness, because he saved a life indirectly. Jail. Yeah, and she looks like a real winner too. Philly Sports Nut, sometimes better than the game. Yeah. Soul Flakes also marked safe from any meaningful discord. I hate baseball and ESPN. Baseball isn't what it used to be with ESPN, so I agree with him on that. Absolutely, I'll take no. John Kruk is a national treasure? No. A local treasure. Then we had to listen to that dribble from the ESPN broadcast guys who had nothing great to talk about either team. They talked about Chicago and their food and not even Philly or LA. Well, we're starting to get into the shit from last night, since last night. The thing is, I didn't have the sound up, so I can't answer to that. LMT? Wait, what? But then again, hasn't commented on threads since last year, so whatever. But the thing is, I had to change my stuff on there because it was still set up to the Philly guy speaks and shit like that. So Curtis Maynard. I see something here. Meet the team. Let me see. No, he's not in this group. Boo! Oh well. But we'll still do work with that, because here's the thing. Shut up, bitch. Whatever. Definitely not how to get people to care about your likely awful podcast. Well, this isn't technically a podcast anymore, so fuck you. Boo, who the heck are you to disparage Sean Kruk? I'm calling the police on you. Did you have trouble dialing 911? And nice clickbait. So I should respond to this, but I won't. And it got forwarded twice, whatever. The thing is, it got 1,360 views. 11 likes, but I'm smart enough to know that these 11 people that liked it used it as a bookmark. So, it's kind of like likes on X. It's more you go to your likes and you find it and say, hey, this asshole said this. So 95% of people commented from home or saw this from home. 2.73% other, 1.92 search, 0.6 is whatever, 45 total interactions, 34 replies, 11 likes. Got no follows out of it. I wasn't expecting, it's just, see, the thing is, it's all these people that don't know my sense of humor or my reasoning behind it. So guess what? You don't like what I have to say? Just scroll on. The one person muted me. Oh, I'm totally hurt. Oh my God. Note the sarcasm in that. Because the thing is this. I will say things like that because I know occasionally how to get looks, even if it's just something viral. Sometimes if it's funny, it'll get you follows. But maybe I got to do a little bit better getting people to see my shit and watch my shit, because if you remember the Howard Stern movie Private Parts, and the radio exec is talking to another exec, and the numbers are very contradictory. It's like, certain percentage love Howard Stern, certain percentage hated Howard Stern. Well, why is his rating so high? Why do you listen for X amount of time? Because I want to hear what he's going to see next. That's what I'm trying to do here. Whether it's a hot take, cold take, I try to stay away from that. I try to be as intellectual as possible, because I'd rather do that than to do something goofy like that. But, if you joke around, sometimes you get followers. Sometimes if you're intellectual, it's like, hey, he's got a good point. So that's why I want to talk of, that's the thing with me. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's goofy stuff, and, it is what it is. But if you don't like what I have to say, sorry, not my problem. Unless I take a pot shot at your family, which I'm not going to do, at least not directly. I may take a pot shot at what appears to be weak intelligence or lack of education or whatever. But I'm not going to give you a hard time with, I'm not going to take pot shots at your family or anything unless you truly deserve it. I believe taking a pot shot at somebody is the same as, let's say, tipping in restaurants, or even calling somebody the C word. Not SEAWARD. We all know what that C word is. I'm a believer in, if you want it, you have to earn it. Now, granted, tipping in restaurants is easy for me because, 15, 20%, then we're going to go a couple dollars more because I don't feel like rounding and I don't want to be a dick and go to the exact penny. Because you go to the exact penny, you're a dick. But whether it's taking a shot at someone or anything like that, it's deserved. Now you say, oh, the John Kruk thing was not deserved. It's a fucking joke. Whether you like it or not, oh well. But you got the point of it and you reacted, and guess what? You fell into the trap. Congratulations. So anyways, let's continue on here. This happened over the weekend. I think I saw this Sunday morning, because they didn't announce it right away, but they announced it Sunday morning, I believe. Saquon Barkley is the latest professional athlete, to have his home burglarized. But it appears that this one is a little bit different than the other ones that we had here, because both he and his family were unharmed after attempting burglary in their home Saturday morning. Now, they were home. So I don't know if this was bad planning by the burglars, or if they just didn't give a shit. But whatever happened, they chose to break in at 5 o'clock. Now, granted, they're probably casing things. They probably were casing things out for a couple of weeks, minimum. And the thing is, why are you casing the house? Most of these other cases that we've had, we've seen the player on the road trip or playing a game at home in a stadium. I mean, it's very easy, and before you report me, it's very easy for criminals to plan this out, because, oh, by the way, it's well known where the Eagles will be each and every week of the season. For example, if you wanted to go after, I don't know, pick a player, pick a team, whatever, you can go to their schedule and you'll say, hey, I see that this athlete will be in Chicago, or he'll be in Boston, Foxborough, but Boston, you get the idea. So while his team is away, the burglars will play. And that's what had happened in a lot of these cases, but I think this is a first case. And this tends to me right now that this may be a totally separate case, because it is a case where the family was there. Now, Captain Tyler Moyer told reporters that officers were dispatched to Barkley's home shortly after 5 a.m. Saturday morning to a burglary in progress call. The alleged suspects had already fled the area when the officers arrived. Yeah, because they hear Barkley, they hear rustling, whatever. It's like, oh shit. You get what you can, you get out. So police are searching for at least 2 suspects and released a photo of the white SUV that they believe is connected with the alleged crime. At least one of the suspects entered the house while Barkley and his family were inside. Now, there's the difference between this case and the cases that we've mentioned or seen, even when I don't mention them on the show. These are cases that, this case is a little different because they were actually there. And, things could have gone sideways very quick. Be like, if he, I'm not saying Saquon has a gun or whatever. I don't know what his setup is with security or whatever. I'm sure Barkley, I'm sure if Barkley ended up shooting the guy, that, we got problems here because he shot and killed the criminal or whatever. But he's defending his family and himself, and but of course, you have to protect yourself, and that would be a self-defense where, okay, no charges. But now, Captain Moyer said, they were home. Unfortunately, as you know, with any situation like this, our main concern is that the residents of that home at the time were unharmed, which they were. They were fine afterwards, obviously unsettled as anyone would be. Because, yeah, anybody breaking into your house, it's like you don't know what they're going to do. Are they looking for something that they know you have? Is there some trophy that they can melt down into gold? Whatever. Is there all kinds of jewelry that they know you have? Is there something else that is there something that they know that they're going after? Or was this a brazen attempt? Because, this is something that, um, you know, this is a more brazen attempt to me because they weren't going just for the sake of getting whatever they wanted without them around. Maybe they didn't know that, who knows? But whatever happened, they ended up breaking into the house, and apparently they were there. Um, Now, Chester County Police in Pennsylvania, or the district attorney's office, said Chester County detectives are assisting Tredyffrin Township PD with the investigation. And Tredyffrin Township is a pretty rich area. I mean, a major crime in Tredyffrin Township is probably toilet papering a tree, or someone playing ding dong ditch. But I mean, I'm a little sarcastic with that, but yeah, it's not like it's Chester, Pennsylvania, where you're in the middle of the fucking hood and the entire city is the hood for the most part. This is a rich and quiet area of the state. So the DA office said in a statement posted to social media, we're incredibly grateful that the Barkley family was not injured during the incident. We are asking the public to help us identify those responsible by checking any home security cameras for suspicious activity in the area around 5 a.m. If you saw anything unusual or have video that may assist investigators, please contact your different township police department immediately. Now, I've said this many times, and I'm going to be walking up the street tomorrow morning when I go to the doctor. I'll tell you right now, I guarantee you that probably, I mean, I'm maybe over exaggerating, but probably half of the houses on this street here going towards the main street, half a block away, guarantee you that they have cameras of some sort. And we've talked about that many different times. We're in the day and age now where we're going to have our own stuff. I mean, even Xfinity offers security features as well. So you're going to see people have these cameras, but they're going to be very conspicuous. You're not going to be able to see them. So, they're not going to overtly be out there unless, like, for example, this apartment that I'm in where, oh, by the way, there's one camera over here, there's a camera over here, a camera over there. You probably got about 10 cameras around the building keeping everything secure. So I would say this. I think this is a very isolated incident. It's very similar to what has happened, but I don't know if something happened. I mean, there could have been something where maybe they knew he was going to be away or the family was going to be away and they canceled. You never know. But whatever it was, they screwed up because, oh, by the way, they're there. But I would rather them, you know, let me rephrase that because, I rather them was not a good choice of words there. Um, you don't want this to happen anywhere. But the thing is, this is probably something that happened over months and months and months of planning because that's what's happened in a lot of these other cases. Like, for example, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Joe Burrow. They're just three names that they mentioned that are NFL players, since this is an NFL player that was burglarized. Now, 7 men have been charged by federal prosecutors for their alleged roles in those burglaries, with one man already pleading guilty and sentenced in June to 24 months in prison. So there's an update there from those that kind of been following these other stories. It's like, oh God, they're okay. Especially if you're a fan of the Chiefs or the Bengals or even the Eagles, or just a good person in general, which apparently I'm not because I'm Philly's #1 John Kruk hater. But, and I think he's got a couple of young kids too. So the kids having that is really, having to deal with that is scary too. But, eventually they'll be okay. I'm sure the Eagles have reached out in regards to, mental health and all that stuff, Saquon and the wife and the kids and all that. So I'm sure they've done that as well. But now, Warner told WCAU-TV, which is NBC Philadelphia, that the department will contact federal authorities to determine whether the incident involving Barkley's home might be connected with the theft group targeting athletes. Yeah, but I think that it may be another group of people possibly because they just didn't give a shit. Or maybe something happened where they thought that that Barkley's family wouldn't be there, and here he was. And also, if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I know this from working overnights and occasionally having a night where I can't get back to sleep after waking up at 4 o'clock or whatever. You are, even though you do have these these cameras and everything and security cameras and all that stuff, 5 o'clock in the morning, even though the sun is starting to rise a little bit later because the summer solstice is past, you are getting the first hints of dawn at that time, and you get that twilight period. So they're probably not too bright. But they might have seen something or found out about something that said, hey, they're not going to be there. So they didn't wait till the season started. They decided, hey, we're going to go now for whatever reason. But this is a growing trend. We look at all the angles of the, Moyer said, we look at all the angles of this because we know obviously it's been all over the news in the past few years about different professional athletes' homes getting burglarized. But the thing is, you just have to realize that, it's very easy to see, oh, Barkley will be in New York this weekend. He'll be here. Oh, he'll be in New York. And oh, by the way, his family will probably go because guess what? Look how close the Meadowlands is to Philly. You know, stuff like that. But you know, I mean, this is a growing trend that's occurred. Now, this probably is happening more than we know, but because this is the star running back of the Super Bowl champion Eagles, it's ended up hitting the local news. But knock on wood, everybody is apparently okay. And he'll be, you know, nobody got hurt. That's the most important thing. Nobody got hurt. So, now, with the World Cup being over, and I think there's still 4 or 5 years left in the collective bargaining agreement for the NFL, I believe. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, nor do I care right now. There has been a theme with a lot of NFL players on social media, and that is that they want grass on all the fields in the NFL. Now, 10, 20 years ago, you would have thought that was impossible. Maybe even 5 years ago. Who knows? But over the last few years, and part of this may be because of the fact that the NFL does go and play at some soccer stadiums over in Europe. You have these setups at these ultra modern stadiums that some of these some of these leagues have built. And by the way, they have promotion, relegation, of course. You know, the more money, the better. Greed is good, all that stuff. But a lot of the NFL players have been pushing that they want grass in all 32 stadiums, or 30 stadiums, but 32 fields. Now, it can be a little problematic short term because they were showing it on the NFL Network. And by the way, I will tell you right now, if you have Xfinity, Comcast for video for cable, you may want to ditch it soon. I'm probably about 3 weeks away, because if the NFL Network doesn't come back, see it. But I've been thinking about it for a while anyway. But the NFL, a lot of the NFL players have been making comments that they want grass to be a permanent surface. Now, there is a slight problem with some of these stadiums, even with the way technology is and stuff like that. It's the fact that you do have a winter climate where things just stop growing because it's fucking cold. And once it gets cold, it doesn't grow until the spring. So that's the one thing to remember, but the technology is there. Now, we do have indoor stadiums in Vegas, and we have a retractable roof stadium in Arizona. And the way that their stadiums are set up, you have the grass that is on the field there when you go to an NFL game, that gets rolled outside and it gets to grow and do whatever over the course of a week or between games. Now, the one thing that Vegas does, because they have UNLV there as well, UNLV plays on the artificial turf, whereas Vegas plays on the regular grass. But there's always something. There's always something that, you know, certain stadiums, like Vegas, for whatever reason, it seems like they always have bad turf. I don't know if it's because they're in a desert climate or whatever, but whatever it is, it just seems like that their field isn't that great. And then you have the cold weather stadiums. Philly has a hybrid setup, but it's mostly grass. Pittsburgh, I don't know what they use, but they got to resod a couple of times a year because they have high school games there. It's just like they just do too much stuff. But I can understand the players wanting this, everything being grass, especially because, oh, by the way, we just had a World Cup where they put in grass. Now, granted, FIFA didn't just put grass in. They put a specific type of grass. I believe it was bluegrass. They specifically put that in so that these stadiums, I think it was 16 of them, they all had, for the most part, a uniform surface. Things change. Like, Mexico City's up about 7,500 feet or whatever. But other than that, everything else was pretty much the same. You have rain issues, you have this, you have that, you have your other issues, but you don't have all these other things there. But the thing is, let's say eventually the NFL does allow this grass, every stadium be grass. Well, you got problems because the Meadowlands has minimum 17 games. And they're going to have a couple of extra games there because I believe their state finals are in the Meadowlands. But they'll probably move that to Rutgers, for example. You have you have different things. You have the link, but they've been able to survive hosting Temple football games and Eagles football. So they have done that. Pittsburgh, they have the Pittsburgh Panthers playing there. And also, they do have high school games that play there as well. So they have to resod a couple of times. Chicago has been called a cow pasture, and they have to resod a lot. Some of these fields are not conducive to the weather. But I think if the NFL were to bow down to the players' union and said, we need to do this, well, you have to give a couple of years, probably. Because you have all these arenas all these stadiums that are indoors, like Minnesota. LA's indoors, even though it's actually an open air stadium. So you might be able to actually grow grass there. Who knows? Seattle, they have funky weather. But some stadiums, you got. Denver somehow does it. But does this also affect potentially the growing trend that everybody wants a dome stadium because everybody wants a Final Four now? Everybody wants additional concerts. Well, that may mess around with some of these plans because guess what? But with these new stadiums, you got one in DC coming. The one in Tennessee may be too far gone, even though you have a year left, that they bring in this new technology unless they planned it already. Cleveland's got a new stadium coming up. You got a couple of different stadiums. You got the Bears who are trying to figure out, do we go to Indiana or do we go up to Arlington Park in Illinois? You got all these different things here. You got these different stadiums. Then you got the link. Eagles may potentially build a new stadium. And I also wouldn't be surprised if it was at Franklin Mills. But that's just me. I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a football stadium, even if it's just like, let's say, Temple, as opposed to the Eagles. But yeah, I understand. There's been a lot of injuries. I mean, knee injuries, Achilles injuries. But the thing is, they happen on grass as well because guess what? If you're going to tear or rupture something, it's going to tear or rupture. Trust me, I know, because I tore my calf muscle a few years ago running upstairs. So, like for example, MetLife Stadium, they have an artificial turf surface because they basically have a game every week. They had natural grass, and they're putting the turf back in probably right now. Well, not exactly right now, but you get the idea. So Laramie Tunsil said on X recently, if stadiums can make grass work for the World Cup, they can make it work for the NFL players. We're worth the cost. Hashtag worth the cost. I think the only difference is the World Cup is in the summer, so the grass is going to grow, whereas the grass is going to die. But the technology is there to heat the field, ultraviolet light, like some European stadiums do for soccer, because they play in the winter. You do have these, the technology is there. It wasn't there a while ago. So yeah, the technology is there. Zaire Franklin of the Packers said, the cost of doing nothing is paid for by players' bodies. Franklin wrote in his own post, make grass mandatory, where hashtag worth the cost. So this is probably a movement that the Players Association had where, hey, if you want to say something about having grass fields, and they've been wanting grass fields forever, you want to get people's eyes on your stuff, hashtag worth the cost. So this is a renewed social media push. And it comes after the MLBPA released a statement at the beginning of the FIFA World Cup urging team owners to make the switch to natural grass surfaces. At FIFA's request, because the men's tournament only plays on grass. The women's tournament, at least the last one, which was in Canada, they did have some artificial turf stadiums. All 11 stadiums hosting World Cup matches installed natural grass playing surfaces. 7 of those stadiums traditionally use synthetic turf as their primary playing surface for NFL games, and will return to that when the tournament concludes on Sunday. Now, I don't know if they're going to consider the link a synthetic surface because it's a hybrid grass, and so I don't know if they're considering that, but there are different things here that they don't have anything like that. So the MLBPA said the temporary installation natural grass fields for the World Cup is a choice by certain NFL team owners to do for soccer players when they refuse to do for NFL players. No. I don't agree with that statement because it was, we only play on grass. Remove that stuff. That's what it was. I disagree with that statement. It's no longer a question of capability. The technology exists, as I've been saying for the last 15 minutes. The expertise exists, and the resources exist to install the high-level grass fields that our players overwhelmingly prefer. Yeah, I agree with that part. I don't agree with the first part that it wasn't a choice. FIFA forced them. It's like, well, if you're not going to do this, then we'll just take this to another stadium, or we just won't. We'll just schedule them at a stadium we already have games at. So we've seen meaningful investments made to meet the standard for international athletes and global events. NFL players who regularly compete on these fields help fund these stadiums and whose work make the league what it is today deserve the same commitment to quality grass fields. Now, I'll also mention one thing. Those soccer stadiums that they play in these NFL games, they get torn to shit if they don't swap out for an artificial field like I think Tottenham Hotspur does. But they complained about the field in Brazil, and these stadiums, these soccer stadiums, their fields are built differently, and their climate is different from what we have here in the United States. So, you know, if you played a whole season on their type of surface, you're going to see a lot different. You're going to see them complaining that their fields aren't lasting, probably. But we won't know because they'll only play one game in a couple of games in England, a couple of games here, a couple of games there. Tight end George Kittle also released a statement in June voicing his support of grass fields. We've made it clear that we prefer grass fields. We know it's better on our bodies, and clearly we know it's possible based on everything that went into putting down grass fields for the World Cup in each stadium. At this point, it comes down to the NFL making a priority and choosing to invest in us as players because our bodies are our business, which they get to capitalize on. Fair statement. But I'll also say, that a lot of the issues has to do with the weather and stuff like that. So it isn't just the fact that we have here, for example, the grass. You know, obviously you got to make sure that these stadiums have this technology. You have to make sure of this and all this other stuff as well, because it's not just that. It's so many different things that go into this. Where let's say the NFL announces it next March or during Super Bowl week next year, leading up to the Valentine's Day Super Bowl. And by the way, ladies, you know, if everything's about you on Valentine's Day, sorry, Super Bowl. But I don't think that you can prepare a stadium that has grass that has an artificial surface to natural grass in a couple of months. The one thing that the players will say won't realize, because of early stages of CTE and whatever, is the fact that it's going to take time to do this, because the World Cup is not an event that's comes together like that. This was an event that was 8 to 10 years in the making. I mean, they've already got, they announced 34's World Cup already. So, probably in a couple of years, we're going to hear that, oh, by the way, the U.S. has the World Cup again at 38. Or maybe, well, they still love Trump, but yeah, so you got a lot of stuff that has to be done here. And whether it's done or not, I think it's going to take time, but I think what's going to happen was, let's say Roger Goodell in his State of the League address during Super Bowl week says, we're going to go grass fields. But the problem is to get the equipment, to get the ultraviolet light machines for the grass, to do this, to do that. It's going to take a couple of years of planning. This wasn't something that came out of nowhere. This was the World Cup. And it's, it isn't something that's planned ahead of time. It's like the Super Bowl. It's planned 3, 4, 5 years in advance. Like, for example, the World Series. The World Series is going to be the end of October, but you don't know what two teams are going to be playing. And they also play in their home arenas, home stadiums, unless another COVID outbreak happens. But you have to realize that, you got to temper the expectations of getting all the fields to turf, because it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take a season or two, because you got to get the equipment, you got to get the right grass. Then you're going to negotiate, well, is it going to be the same type of grass, or is it going to be a type of grass that's fit for that region of the country? You get the ideas. And we also talk about turf and grass, and also eligible. And I think the races that we're going to be looking at this weekend, as of right now, are dirt races, believe it or not. So we're going to look at Saratoga. They got the Coaching Club American Oaks this weekend. A couple of the horses that ran the Kentucky Oaks are going to run in that race. And then we're going to focus on Del Mar, because they have a Breeders' Cup winning your in race, the Bing Crosby. That will get you into the Breeders' Cup Sprint if you win. And we'll look at those two races, and we'll see how things shake out. And maybe we add a race or two here and there, or maybe not. But either way, we'll see if we can get you guys more winners. And hopefully this week, something with a bigger payout. Like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I gave you that double that paid $300 and some for a $20 bet. But and also check out Q&A Racing for Quills Picks winners, where I will be writing that article tonight, probably as soon as this is over, because guess what? I got a doctor's appointment at 8:30. But one last thing to note here is that MLB is trying to preserve the draft, and we are at that time here where we're going to hear every few days the owners propose this, the union proposed this. We're going to see some back and forth here, but probably not going to see any real progress until we get closer. And it may be that these two sides are so far apart now that they may never get to that part where they even agree on the little stuff, because sometimes you got to get the little stuff before you get to the big stuff. But the Players Union did make a proposal, a counter proposal to the draft comments that the draft proposal that the MLB executives had. So it took 33 days, but things happen. But now the league proposed cutting the draft from 20 to 12 rounds, slash the amateur signing bonuses by more than 150 million, and preventing high school players from entering. But it just seems like, well, we're going to protect college. Well, what does protecting college? I mean, all of a sudden you want to protect college? I mean, throw the costs on the NCAA and then but whatever. But I mean, it just the MLB offer just doesn't make sense. But the Players Association proposed not only to maintain draft eligibility for high school and junior college players, but also for those from four-year universities to be eligible after their sophomore year, regardless of age. Now, college sophomores Jesus Christ, Phillies just ran themselves into a double play. Stay at third base, JT. So he had a jam job or a cue shot to third base. Crawford goes home. He's pinch running. JT, who's fast for a catcher, even at 35 years old, starts to go to third. He's about 2-3 steps away from third base. Now, the one thing is, and we'll get back to the Players Association stuff here. The thing is, if you're the Phillies, you want two guys on third base. And the Dodgers tagged both players, and JT would have been out because Crawford would have rights to the bag because he occupied it before the pitch was thrown. Instead, being 5 to 10 feet away from third base, he decides to go back to second. So Crawford got tagged a little too quickly. Then, because also you want to be on third base as well, because you give the batter an opportunity if he can get there. If Crawford stays in the rundown a little bit longer, to go to second. So, but you just have to. The goal is to get two guys on third base, because Justin Crawford would be safe, JT would be out because Justin would have it. Just bad base running here. And that's why Don Mattingly doesn't want to be a full-time manager, even though he says he wants to be back next year, because he committed 2 years to Philadelphia. He'll be committed into a mental institution after this game tonight. But going back to the Players Association here. Now, one thing I didn't know, college sophomores are currently They're only eligible if they are at least 21 years old by August 1st of their draft year. So you can be 20 in July, but you have to be 21 by August 1st. So the MLBPA wants to maintain a system where signing bonus pools grow with industry revenues. It was $358.7 million in 2026, up from $350.4 in 2025, and provide small market teams with the ability to increase them. I think the problem is they're trying to do whatever they can to balance everything through these, through salary cap. I don't think salary cap is the answer. I think promotion relegation is, but we will never see that in North America. So if you hear me say I would like to see promotion relegation, I will also say with it, whether I say it beforehand or I say it after the fact, I know it's not going to happen in America other than soccer. It's not going to happen because baseball has been ingrained with the minor league system and farm system for almost 100 years in baseball. So you're not going to see it. But I do think that you will have I think you do, but this is the way sports have been over the last 20, 30 years, especially in North America. We're going to cap everything. You can't spend more than this amount. And in some cases, it does lead to parity in leagues. And sometimes it doesn't. But, so teams designating a small market under collective bargaining agreement could add $2 million to their bonus pools in one draft over the next 5 years. Small market team would also get an additional $1 million in bonus pool money for making the playoffs the prior year. MLBPA wants to preserve competitive balance picks whereby low revenue and small market teams are eligible to receive a pick in round A, which is between the first and second round, or round B between the second and thirds. Also, I will say this. I also think a draft lottery does not work as well. Now, they don't mention it in this article, but the thing is, Major League Baseball, on average, has the longest wait to seeing your draft picks make it to the major leagues or whatever the top league is in this structure. Because baseball has 4 or 5 different levels. You have single A, advanced A, double A, triple A, and then the majors. So you look at this, and I think with the other sport, well, it's not as bad in hockey, but it's very bad in basketball because blame it on the Sixers because they were trusting the process. The problem with the lottery, especially in the NBA, but they've tried to shrink it down a little bit. The problem is that it is quote unquote merit based. You're the worst team, you get the best chance. Now they cut that down. And they've done all different things with it where it just makes my head explode. But I just think that there's all kinds of problems here, and the draft lottery does not work. Because Scott Boras is the reason why MLB has a draft lottery. But the problem is you're putting a draft lottery in, and on average, it takes a couple of years for them to get to the majors. Now, you have a Paul Skeens, you have this guy, you have that guy where they were a number 1 pick. They rocketed to the majors. But not every team drafts a guy that rockets to the majors in a matter of weeks or months. You misread what they do. Or things just happen where things just blow up in your face. Now, does the salary cap help? Yeah. But I think promotion relegation also will do that as well. But I will also say this again, we're not going to see it in my lifetime or even in our kids' lifetime. So the union also proposed reducing the tax penalties levied at teams that go over their allotted pools. The current CBA includes a 75% overage tax and a loss of a first-round pick for teams that outspend their pool by more than 5%. It increases to 100% tax and a loss of a first and second-round pick for those that are over by more than 10%. Under the proposal, teams could go over their allotted spending pools by as much as 15% without losing a draft pick, and wouldn't lose a first-round pick unless they go over by more than 20%. And there's all kinds of stuff here. The MLBPA wants the draft moved from July to June, which I don't think is happening. I just think that part of the problem with, one thing I like, also, we don't have the short season leagues anymore in minor league baseball. Remember the Appalachian League? Where you play X amount of games, you play half a season. I mean, you still have it in the Florida Gulf Coast League, but in the Arizona League, or whatever they call those leagues now. And they want the draft moved from July to June. But the thing is, if you get drafted in July and you sign right away, or you're a senior that lived off the teat of NIL, you're ready to go and play in the minor leagues, allegedly. So, and it will also they also propose allow for the trading of picks in the first 10 rounds up to 2 hours before the start of the draft. So you can't just say, well, we want the number 1 pick. We're at number 3. We'll give you a first this year and a first next year. Once you're within that 2-hour window, apparently they're not going to allow it. That's what they're proposing, but I don't know. But in June, MLB proposed a 12-round hard slot domestic draft with signing bonus pools totaling $200 million in 2027. It proposed an international draft under the same parameters, all of which would be a broader package highlighted by a cap and floor system at the major league level. It is yet to make a proposal for international amateurs, the MLBPA that is, which constitutes players born outside the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico. Now, I just think that you're going to the problem isn't necessarily the minor leagues, but Major League Baseball controls that, and also the process with that. But I just think when you hear, because we're going to hear it sometime this year, sometime between now and December, MLB has lost X amount of dollars. Now that's probably a number for all 30 teams. It's like, all right, Cardinals, what did you lose this year? Reds, what did you lose? Okay, what did you lose? Because remember, we were under this regional sports network system that blew up in our faces. And somehow we still have this set up. And They're even saying that um, NBC Sports Philadelphia won't be around that much longer because they used to have like 6, 7, 8 different regional sports networks, and now they're down to 2, maybe 3. But you got to realize that, and I'm not defending the union, I'm not defending the executives. I'm looking as if I'm a mediator or whatever, but I'm not. A lot of these teams lost money because they were planning on the regional sport networks or RSNs to be sustainable for however long their contract was for rights to the games. Well, there was cord cutting, there was this, there was that, and oh, by the way, look what happened. So when you hear teams losing millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, a lot of it will have to do with these RSNs that went belly up and were part of the Bally Sports, FanDuel Sports, that whole conglomerate that they had. And they're now going into streaming, and the streaming, the ad revenue isn't what it was that they were planning with the RSNs and all that. So you're losing that projected revenue isn't there. And oh, by the way, you spent $40 million for this particular player. Oh shit! Now we gotta figure out what we're going to do, because guess what? We're going to lose money on the balance sheet at the end of the year. So whenever we hear MLB has lost X amount of money, I will be telling you, yeah, that's probably the RSNs. And it may be some teams just suck ass for a couple of years in a row, and they lost ticket revenue too. So even though they do have NBC joining in, you have all these different TV contracts now, you have ESPN handling the MLB.TV stuff, the local and regional sports networks, they're not making the money. The teams aren't making the money as a result. And oh, by the way, everything goes to shit. So that's something to remember for when those numbers come out. And oh, by the way, there's a lockout or a strike depending on who declares what first. But then again, if they do get locked out, if they do get traded, if they do strike, it won't be effective until February, because that's when you start losing games, you start losing getting ready for the season, all that stuff. Even though it's still a lockout and you can't make any deals, but you can kind of say, hey, Scott, when this is up and all that, we'll pay him, that sort of thing. So, but it's all, it's all going to be an epic shit show, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of a work stoppage and whatever happens. So, but the thing is, I don't stop. Also eligible on Saturday at 10 a.m. We'll look at Saratoga and Del Mar. Quills Picks winners will be up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. It'll be up around 12 o'clock. It's an early race from Colonial Downs right now, so I'm going to write it up tonight so I have it ready to go. But we'll be ready to go, and we'll do it live. And I went a lot longer than I expected, but I found an extra topic, and I want to mock the people that are giving me a hard time because of Kruk and all that, but whatever. But that is going to be it for the show, and I do appreciate each and every one of you for watching tonight, whether it's live or after the fact. And I'm leaning towards no show on Thursday, so I would recommend going to twitch.tv/JoeQuills, subscribe, download the app, because if you're sitting there, you get the alert, and if I remember to put the right thing down, the right alert, you'll get a laugh and say, yeah, I'll join them. So that's something I would tell you guys. So, but that's it for now. I do appreciate each and every one of you. So let's do it live. We're definitely going to do it live Saturday. We may do it Thursday. I don't know. It depends if I feel like going up the parks and getting more content or whatever. But if I don't, we'll be here Thursday night. And we'll do it live sometime between then. So join me then. And hope everybody has a great night. Sorry for the yawn.